back to another video. In this particular video, I'm going to be analyzing the perspective at which we create our belief systems within said self. In order to understand where the belief system is fundamentally rooted, well, we have to understand where the structure of said system holds itself. Would you say that it is based upon your body or your mind that you have the ability to hold yourself and make your decisions into how you essentially go in directions in life? You could argue that it might be the mind making said decision, but it would not be able to do so without said body. But in the root of where the stemming or the core fundamental value of what causes you to veer in which direction, where might we find this particular self? A higher power, if you wish. Well, let's analyze this perspective then. Would you say that it is based entirely upon your external experience that you derive your internal belief systems from? Not entirely, but partially. And would you say that not entirely, but partially, you yourself would then also create said belief system through your mind? Which means if there's a perception of an external force within said external universe, such as a higher power, then we might argue that this is a natural human perception rather than a fundamentally created core belief based on nothingness. But rather, if we were to analyze a perspective that every core fundamental human sense of any sort is meant to specifically relay the senses in order for the brain to then create the central experience known as what we experience in consciousness as the human experience at this particular time. But in the fundamental core values of humans, we find that they arise the notion of a creator, a higher power, which if we were to look on the analysis now, based on where is the stemming or the core of said fundamental beliefs. And once again, that it begins that entire process, which is, if we were to look at specifically that it is based partially upon external forces, such as the external universe, that we may then create our internal response. And from said internal response, you then veer in the direction towards said external universe according to which state you have said core belief. And if said core belief is of a more evil, you would say you become more of a devil worshipper. Whereas if you see this higher power take on of a more God, you would then be seen as a more God-worshipping individual, based on where the core fundamental higher power above said individual causes said individual to have their decisions through their mind, which then they act upon within said body. Sounds like a basic human interaction, doesn't it? At which rate is this switch in this said higher power occurring? And at which rate can you be moved back and forth once again as a human being, not even by conscious viewing ability to recognize that there is a force that we are pulled back and forth constantly, and that is known as our conscience. And conscious stems from a term that means under pressure. It is It is similar to the, you could say, pressurizing system of a submarine. When you analyze the conscience of an individual, you would essentially see which pressure causes them to veer where. And what is this pressure? Well, you could argue that just as, say, said field, as you would imagine here, within said light and darkness, that there is both light and dark energies within said universe, such as light and dark matter as well within said physical universe, which we can ultimately see through said light and dark. Now, in the beginning, there was only darkness, and then God said, "Let there be light." And without being able to differentiate or experiencing one and being able to recognize the other, we would not be able to essentially differentiate what each one is different from. Which means if we did not experience evil as humans, first darkness, then you would not be able to differentiate said life experience from the light, which can be achieved in a state of mind, which is in itself a alchemical process, a transmutation of sorts, where you take yourself from one state of being into a different state of being. And this can occur rapidly at the rate of conversation. The question now arises, where does this higher power stem from? In the understanding of the higher power, you would argue that you could alternately breathe in said energy through an energetic pair of lungs, such as the chakras. And each chakra creates what is known as an emotion. And through these emotions, you could see, once again, dualities of said emotions that sit within said chakra. And within said chakra, these driving forces cause you to pull in said direction according to said moral compass, you could say. Which higher power are you veering towards, no matter which chakra you specifically obey? Now I want you to pay close attention within said screen, from the darkness within said side of my body to light within said side of my body at that particular moment. Do you see how even within standing within said light, the light in the room still hasn't changed, but even then, there is a moment where their darkness begins, and there's a moment where the light is differentiated the moment I stand within said light. The shadow and the self. In the understanding of discovering the self, I might attach myself to the shadow, that which I can see my reflection upon said physical world, because that's what I believe myself to be, according to said shadow. But then if I realize that if I simply take a step towards the light, that the room re-illuminates itself. Essentially, the same could be said about life. The moment you decide as a human, as a being, as a person, that you can always choose which direction even the darkness might be. You simply have to be able to recognize the darkness from the light. And in the split of energies within said universe, simply based upon said light, that which my body now creates the pull. The moment I stand upon said light, you can literally see within said universe, without the environment changing, that there's a darker side to one particular side of my body within said space, and a lighter side within said space as well on the other side of my body. And these two forces are what constantly pull your conscious back and forth. And the moment you step into the light, you essentially get rid of said shadow. And this constant rebirth process is the exchange at which you then grow and develop based on your making decisions of your moral compass as a human being. And the more you can create this pattern, the better we can alternately see the development of not just you as yourself in this particular life, but this valor could be radiated infinitely throughout eras from this point forward. That is how we essentially divide and realize which and where the fundamental core belief sits at. It is what is known as the spirit. And the beauty behind religion, and in its essence, not to point out to one particular religion, because all religion is simply a perspective of the same thing. It is written by different understandings of the same thing. But what is that thing? If we were to look at religion and read it based on a physical experience, we would not identify said power. Religion is meant to be the fundamental pillars from which you uphold your spirit with, which means these are values you take on as you place said symbol upon your form of worship. And in said form of worship, you find you want said story to be what the world represents, which creates wars in its exchange. And then rather than understanding the idea behind one particular religion, let's look at it from the perspective of understanding all religion, which all speak of the same struggle represented in different understandings. Now, which understanding would you say has been the most effective? I'll leave that up to you to answer. Thank you.